Welcome, everyone in the United States, Canada, and around the world to another episode of It's a Wrap with Rap. I am your host, Ron Rapaport, the podcast where we share inspiring stories of people who have overcome adversity, take action, and make a powerful impact in the world. Today, we have an amazing guest joining us, Luke Mickelson. He's the founder of Sleep in Heavenly Peace, a nonprofit organization that builds bunk beds for children who don't have a bed of their own. Luke started this mission after discovering that far too many kids were sleeping on floors, couches, or in unsafe situations. Now, what began as a simple act of kindness grew into a nationwide movement with hundreds of chapters and thousands of volunteers under one powerful message: no kid sleeps on the floor in our town. Luke's story is one of compassion, leadership, and stepping up when a need presents itself. We will talk about the origin of SHP, the impact it is having across the country, and how one man's decision to make a difference changed countless lives. Luke, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Ron. I appreciate it.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. So glad you could join us. Please introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about yourself.
You bet. And again, thank you for having me on. This is, I love sharing the story simply because, well, two reasons. I think it's very important that we child bedlessness is a problem that people don't know about, and so
Yeah.
anytime we can share it, I appreciate the opportunity to share with your audience. And as for me, look, I'm nothing special. I'm a farm kid from Idaho. I grew up in a small town, 4,000 people, and the beauty, pros and cons, however you want to look at it, of living in a small town is you know everybody and they know you, right? And they
Right.
know everything about you.
Well,
But I
I,
think,
I got to stop you there. You're not a nobody. You are a somebody, and you're doing great work. And this podcast, I know you probably haven't listened to many of the episodes, but we do dwell on topics that people don't know about and people don't talk about. So we're glad to have you.
that's great. It's perfect because, you know, uh, and I was one of those people. This all started in 2012. And like I said, I was, the beauty of living in a small town and getting to know everybody, you ultimately end up having this bond
Yeah.
with people. You have to. I graduated with 69 people in my class, right? A really small school, and
Yeah.
I was the student body president, the vice president. All my brothers and sisters were the same. We just, and if you knew how to pick up a ball and throw it in the right direction, you were going to play sports whether you liked it or not. So, and those were all great things. And as I look back, they really shaped who I am. And it shaped, I think, how I came into my passion of serving other people and service itself. And I've always kind of lived off the motto that if you want true joy, you need to stop looking at yourself and find out ways that you can help other people. And even though your troubles, they don't go away, they just don't seem as heavy. And living in a small town, you do rely
Yeah.
on other people and they rely on you. And so you end up with this sense of almost obligation to help other people. And I've always kind of carried that through my life, even in my business life. I've always tried to look at my profession, which was in water treatment. I actually did professional water treatment for about 20 years, outside sales, and
Uh-huh.
I always try to look at that as a way of being a service to my customers, right? Not just
Right.
selling a product,
Right.
but being the guy that they relied on when they had trouble and trying to figure things out. It was like those were the times that I actually felt like I shined because I enjoyed going in there and being a problem solver for people, and really I looked at my service as my payment to them, if you will, and I've always tried to carry that with me.
Yeah, I can tell right off the bat, you're a great guy, and
Oh,
I'm sure you get a lot of pleasure from helping other people, and that's what this podcast is all about, to give people hope, inspiration,
right.
and bring people on like you to tell their story. So take us back to 2012. What was the moment that opened your eyes to the need for beds in your community?
You know, what one major thing that was going on in my life, I was about 35 years old. And Ron, I you hear people going through midlife crisis, and
Yeah.
I guess I was no different. If that's what it was, I guess that's what it was. But I was going through this period of time in my life where I was doubting my faith. I was doubting my purpose. I didn't think I really had one. I had a great job. I mean, on paper, I was fine. Like in fact, I felt pretty guilty, feeling bad, and feeling this hole that was in my heart because I know a lot of people that were far worse off. But
Yeah.
it's even talking to yourself, trying to get yourself out of this rut. It did nothing really helped. Nothing really did anything other than when I'd go and help people. And in my church at the time, I held a position called young men's president. Now, basically in the South, that would be like a youth pastor. Now, I'm not a youth pastor. I don't claim to be one, but I really enjoyed working with the youth. I was a football coach, and I coached all my kids through soccer and baseball and did all that stuff. And I
Yeah.
enjoyed working with the youth.
Sure.
Well, in this position, we once a week we'd sit with the other auxiliary members of the church and we talk about either members or things that are happening in the community, particularly people that we were helping. Well, there was this one family that the church was helping with rent and food and all this stuff.
Sure.
And what really struck me was, again, I live in a small 4,000 populated town. I've been everywhere in that town, or at least I thought I had been. This couple lived in such a remote little apartment. I didn't know it even existed. So not only did that catch my eye, or my ear rather, the topic came up that this family, they had kids and they didn't have any beds. And for whatever reason, Ron, that just really hit me. I've got kids of my own. They were young. To
Right.
think about them and thinking about my Boy Scouts, the kids that are part of my program, if they were sleeping on the floor day in and day, I mean, it just in this day and age, that just didn't ring very well with me. And the other thing that came about was being a young men's president and being responsible for the spiritual growth, but also the activity during the week for these young men, trying to find an activity that didn't involve a video game or a screen and then enjoy it was a very tough thing to do. you know
That's true. Yeah.
and, and so when this idea or this problem came about,
Yeah.
I thought, here's a great opportunity that I could get an Xbox controller out of these boys' hands, put a drill and a sander in it, and teach them something, right? Of
Yeah.
course, I'd never built furniture in my life before, but I wasn't a stranger to tools. I mean, I knew how to use a saw and a hammer, and so that's what we did. I took my Boy Scouts and told them kind of what the problem was, and after they kind of discussed some things, I said, you know what? How about you guys coming to my house this week and we'll just build a bed for this family. We'll build a bunk bed. My daughter's got one. So, I went home after that meeting and went down and measured, the bunk bed they had. I made a few changes because I knew I was dealing with teenagers that I need
Yeah.
to make this a simple process. Um,
Yeah.
and, and lo and behold, that's what we did. And I was really nervous, not knowing how the boys would react.
If you are enjoying listening to or viewing the podcast, we would appreciate you spreading the word by sharing the podcast to your family and friends. Please visit the podcast website, itsarapwithrap.com, where you can find all the episodes, previews of future episodes, the podcast Book Nook, showcasing many of the books our guests have authored, and a link to subscribe to the podcast email list, as well as products and services offered by our sponsors.
Right? I mean, this was a meaningful thing for me, and
Right.
I was hoping that would be meaningful for them. And sure enough, watching these boys grab wood and cut it and drill it out and put this
Yeah.
bed together and see their excitement about it, boy, it melted my heart. It was just exactly what I was hoping it would happen.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I went to junior high, we had shop classes.
Hmm.
They don't do that anymore, do they?
No, they don't. Not really. Not there. It seems like they're starting to come back now. Sleep and Heavily Peace nationwide. We work with some shop class teachers now, but
Okay.
not like when I was in school either. There was always shop class, right?
Yeah, we were planing things, and
Yeah.
we had metal shop, and I think we had mechanical drawing. You
Oh,
know,
sure.
whether you liked it or not, you were going to shop class.
And it seemed like wasn't it like a certain type of group of kids that went to shop class? It seemed like
No, when I
there was
went, every boy had to go and every girl had to go to home ec.
yeah,
And
oh yeah,
whether you liked it, hammers or whatever,
oh yeah. Well,
no,
and it's a
you're going.
oh
You're
yeah.
gonna learn it.
And the sad thing is, it's a lost art, and it's one
Yeah,
thing that when you hear about the trades and the what's coming down the pipe for us in the future, and the
yeah,
lack of businesses and people in the trades, we're going to be hurting as a society if we don't get some of this stuff back. And that's why I think I'm starting to see a lot of trades and shop class come back into high school,
yeah. That's a good
because it's
idea.
important for these kids to get excited about it. And
Yeah.
and lo and behold, that's what I saw. I mean, they didn't have an Xbox controller in their hand; they had a sander, and it wasn't like easy work.
Oh
But
no.
but I think Ron, I think I could see them enjoying it, and I'd like to think it was because they knew what it was going for,
And
and so
there's an end product instead of just
right,
the end of a game or whatever. So
correct.
when you built that very first bed, Luke, did you have any idea it would grow into a national movement?
I get that question a lot, Ron. I mean, who would have known? I didn't even know child bedlessness, again, not a real word, but a real problem, was
Right.
even a problem. And as the story goes, when we went to deliver the bed, I had to stay home because it was the first part of December in Idaho, which is not a warm place, by the way.
Yeah, I can
It's almost
imagine.
Christmas time, and we were, freezing in our garage building this bed, and I had to stay back and clean the garage up. But the boys went with their parents and some of the other leaders, and they went and delivered this bed. And the next day at church, I got to hear the amazing story of the kids and their excitement and the parents. And I was I was excited, but I was pretty jealous that I missed the end product, if you will. But I remember coming home,
Yeah.
that week I could feel this hole that got filled for a little bit start to develop again. And my kids were young at the time, 10 and
Yeah.
6, and I remember we were watching TV, and an Xbox controller game commercial came on, and it was coming around Christmas time, so I knew the kids were going to ask for this Xbox game, right?
Yeah.
And sure enough, they did. And I don't know, it was just such a perfect storm, Ron. I was sitting on my couch of trying to dig myself out of this, whatever depression or whatever you want to call it, that was
Let's call it funk.
yeah,
Some
a funk, yeah, just a
yeah.
plain old funk coming over me. And then my kids talking about an Xbox game they want that, here I just built and we delivered a bed to a child that didn't have any. It was almost like it was just a perfect storm. And I remember, you know what? I can sit here as a dad. I can teach these kids. I can talk to them. I can even show them pictures. But nothing's going to do it like what the Boy Scouts did. Getting your hands dirty, getting a drill or a hammer in your hands and actually working on it. And so
Yeah.
I I got up off the couch and started walking to the garage. I had some leftover wood out in the garage, and I remember my kids were like, "Dad, where are you going?" And I said, "You know what? I'm going to build another bunk bed, and you're coming with me." And so that's what we did for the next couple of nights. Me and my kids built another bunk bed for a family. And why that's significant is because I had no idea what to do with it. I didn't know that there was another child that didn't have a bed to sleep on. I didn't know it was such a problem. I just did it for my kids, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, you just raised a question in my head. How prevalent is this with kids
So
sleeping on the floor or wherever?
right. So there are no national still 14 years later, there are still no national statistics about child bedlessness. One thing that was really shocking to me when we started building more beds and sharing it on Facebook and showing people what we're doing, I got called a number of times from places, other organizations like CASA, CPS, foster care programs. And
Yeah.
I learned that beds for kids, if it wasn't the number one, it was at least in the top three hardest thing for these organizations to find because there was nobody doing it. There was no service, there was no organization, there was no one doing this. And so it was such an unknown thing to me. Now we know because of just being around for 14 years doing what we're doing. And
Right.
we're no statisticians, but mind you, but we know and have calculated it's greater than 3% of the total population on average of any city. So you got 100,000 people in your town, there are 3,000 kids without a bed
Yeah, can
sleeping.
you take a place like Chicago or LA or New
Oh,
York, and
it's worse. Yeah.
it's worse. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We
Oh,
have some, Ron, we have some chapters right now. The Phoenix chapter, I'll give you an example. The Phoenix chapter, they have 5,000 kids right now on their application
wow.
list. And that's just one town. Now, granted, it's a big town, but
Yeah.
it's a pandemic. And here we were, me and my kids finished this bunk bed. I had no idea what to do with it. I mean,
And quite honestly, before I met you tonight, I never thought of it as a problem.
oh yeah.
Just like everybody else. Luke, what were the biggest challenges you faced in those early days of
You
starting out?
know, yeah, it was just the unknown. Like, I mean, I'm a farm kid from Idaho. Yeah, granted, I was, in sales. I was in business. I was taking over a business for my stepdad. But when it came to a nonprofit or came to organizing service projects, I'd never done anything like that before. So,
Yeah,
that was a little bit of a challenge. And then when we finally became a charity, asking people for money just made me really uncomfortable. It just I don't know why, for whatever reason. I don't have a problem now, but back then it was just, I'd always want to work for my dollars, if you will, and
yeah,
to go in and ask people to help donate. Which the funny part about that is it's actually the easiest thing. A part of our organization now is asking for money, because when you tell people that I build beds, we build beds for kids that don't have beds. Once they understand that that's a real thing, yeah, there's no problem getting some money from them to help us do what we do, because
oh,
it's
yeah, I can
it's it's
imagine.
pretty shocking. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So, how did you transition from a local volunteer project to building a nationwide organization?
So it's a great question. Like I said, the more that we built and delivered and shared on Facebook and whatnot, what we're doing, the more we heard about the kids that were sleeping in bad situations. I mean, we're
Yeah,
talking sleeping on crates and 4 or 5 kids to a bed, or with mom and dad. I mean, just
yeah,
horrible situations. And the more we did, the more we responded, the more we got back. And then all of a sudden we had friends in other states that wanted to do what we were doing. And so I said, hey, why don't we like start chapters, and we'll
yeah,
train them, we'll just do what we're doing over there. And it all just kind of slow rolled into one pivotal moment, really. And I just actually just finished this chapter in my book tonight. So in 2018, so this is about 6 years later, right? We had developed this slow roll into about 9 chapters in about 5 different states. Just mostly friends and family that knew what we're doing. They lived a state over or a town over, and they wanted to do it in their own hometown. But we caught the ear of a Facebook watch series called Returning the Favor. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's no longer around.
no, I haven't.
They ran four seasons, but the host was Mike Rowe. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
dirty,
Mike Rose,
dirty,
sure.
dirty jobs, Mike Rowe. Who doesn't love that guy, right?
Yeah,
And so, they the stick of the whole program was, they would find a nonprofit around the country. They would highlight the nonprofit and the founder, and then at the end of the day, Mike Rowe would show up, kind of surprise them, and then he would give them something that they needed, whether it was a car or money or product. In our case, we didn't have a warehouse to build in. We were, still storage units and a garage, and it
yeah,
just was really low key. And we actually did get kind of a rental rundown warehouse to use for a little bit. So when Mike Rowe showed up in the beginning of 2018, and we were featured on this program, we were viewed by 10 million people.
wow,
And really what that did was, they gave us a warehouse to use for 3 years, which was awesome. But the biggest benefit we got from that was the megaphone that just announced child bedlessness, and how Sleep and Emily Peace is an organization that not only solves that, but has built a platform. So anybody anywhere in the country, if you wanted to build beds for your own kids, you could start a chapter. Well, we got 5,000 chapter requests. I mean, within 2 years, it just blew up. And So now, we've trained year to date. I shouldn't say year to date. From the beginning, we've trained over 430 chapter presidents. We're in 4 states, and now just this last year in 2025, we broke a record. We built almost 90,000 beds.
Wow. What an
Yeah,
accomplishment.
yeah. It was well, and
How,
it's on the back of a lot of amazing people, and that's one
oh
thing I
yeah.
learned, Ron, is not only was there a need for child beds, um, but I also learned that there is amazing people in my own community and throughout the entire country, millions of people that really want to give back. They just don't know how, and they
Yes.
can't find an organization that really fits in their passion and their hearts, and I'm glad to say that we've been able to find some.
Yeah. And you've answered a few of my questions. I wanted to know about community involvement and volunteers. And obviously that played a big role in catapulting this whole thing.
Oh yeah.
And now you have chapters across the country. How does the chapter model work and what makes it so effective?
Great question. I mean, I love this question because, we could have just built a bed in a warehouse in Idaho and tried to supply, beds to wherever we found a need. Because I literally got calls from Florida, from New York, from all over the country early in the early days when we were still just in.
Parents, caregivers, and anyone raising kids in a digital world, this message is for you. Before the smartphone, before the apps, before the endless scrolling, there's a conversation that must happen. And that conversation is at the heart of Adam Ferguson's powerful and practical book, The Things You Have to Do Before I Buy You a Phone. In today's world, giving a child a phone isn't just about convenience, it's about responsibility, maturity, and preparation. Adam speaks directly to parents who want to raise confident, grounded kids without fear, guilt, or confusion. This book is not anti technology, it's pro intentional parenting. Through real life examples, clear expectations, and thoughtful guidance, Adam lays out the essential steps every child should take before receiving their first phone. From building trust and accountability to understanding online behavior, boundaries, and consequences, this book helps families get on the same page before the screen ever turns on. What makes The Things You Have to Do Before I Buy You a Phone so impactful is its tone, honest, practical, and deeply respectful of both parents and kids. Adam doesn't preach, he equips. He empowers parents to lead with clarity and kids to understand that a phone is a privilege, not a right. This is the kind of book that sparks meaningful conversations at the dinner table, sets healthy expectations early, and helps families avoid the conflicts that often come with technology. If you've ever wondered, how do I know my child is ready for a phone? This book gives you that roadmap. Parents, educators, and mentors, this is a must read for navigating childhood and adolescence in a digital age. Pick up your copy of The Things You Have to Do Before I Buy You a Phone by Adam Ferguson and start building responsibility before the device ever enters your child's hands. The book is available from Amazon and wherever books are sold in hardcover and Kindle formats.
Falls, Idaho. So I
Yeah,
knew then that if we didn't build a platform that people could follow easy, right, and make it
yeah,
an easy process, that we weren't really going to make the dent that we needed. And so, especially when Returning the Favor aired, we had to really ramp up how we were going to train these chapters, um, which is the hardest part about being a chapter, founded or structured organization is you're like a franchise, right? So you've
right.
got to have some standards that each franchise follows or each chapter follows. But for the most part, these chapter presidents pretty much have the autonomy to build whenever they want, deliver when they deliver to whom they ever want within the parameters that we give them. And it works fabulously because, and this is the key for every nonprofit out there that's listening, if you don't include as many volunteers locally as you possibly can, then you won't grow near as fast or have near as much impact as you want. And that's what we found is the chapter model allowed us to extend what we were doing everywhere. And it also allowed, I mean, these chapter presidents, the core team members of their chapter, and all of the volunteers that help out during the build days in that local town now become the mouthpiece, now become, the salesman, if you will, for the chapter, for our mission, raising awareness and helping us find kids that are in need, and that we have grown so much organically. There's been some big national stories. Sure, I was a CNN hero. I was on American Ninja Warrior, for crying out
Oh,
loud.
really?
It's really stupid stuff. But what really moved SHP in the right direction was emphasizing that we are a local charity. Yes, we're nationally footprinted, but we are built on the backbone of local communities and the people in those communities. In fact, when I was a CNN hero, the very next day after, I don't know if you've seen the CNN hero um, program, but
I haven't, but I'm going to watch it.
yeah, they take CNN takes 10 people from across the world each year, and they highlight a charity. And then one night, it's actually at the what is the Museum of Natural History in New York. They fly us there and they honor you one night. It's like my presenter was actually Bryan Cranston, which was kind of a cool deal.
Yeah.
Um, but the next day they assembled all of us together and they gave us like media training because we were going to get hit up by all sorts of people, and we did. But the next thing they talked about was our mission statements, because they wanted us to tell them and train us how we would tell people our mission statement. Well, they went around the room, these 9 other charities, and talked about their mission statement. Then they came to us and they didn't really know what to say, because our mission statement, it used to be our motto, and it's our mission statement now: no kid sleeps on the floor in our town. Well,
Right.
now a mission statement is generally what a company wants to tell the public what they're doing.
Yeah.
Ours is completely opposite. We want the public. It's meant for the public and the community to tell everybody what they're going to do. Our town, right? Because we feel very strongly that to solve this issue, it needs to be solved on the local level.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, can you share with us a memorable story from a bed delivery that stayed with you?
Oh yeah, yeah. So my very first one was obviously my most impactful one. And there's been many. I've got stories of foster care kids being split up in 24 hours if we don't get a bed to them. I mean, some really there's one Christmas story here where it was a sad situation. A boyfriend, mentally ill boyfriend, shot up his girlfriend and a couple of kids right in front of everybody, and the kids had to go sit with grandma and grandpa, go live with them, and they didn't have any beds. So I mean, some really crazy stories. But for me, my very first bed delivery, when my kids and I built that first bed, we found the story that we wanted this bed to go to, and it's my Haley story. So I met Haley. She was a 6-year-old girl that had never slept on a bed. She had
Wow.
only slept in the back seat of her mom's car. They were homeless,
Wow.
and through some friends of mine and effort, they finally got a house. Now it was a government assisted house. You can imagine what it looked like. It wasn't the nicest thing in the world. In fact, when we showed up to deliver the bed, I walked into the home and there wasn't anything in the house. I mean, it was an empty house. It had walls and a ceiling. That was about it. No couch, no chairs or tables to eat breakfast at. There was a milk crate that had a hot plate and a can of soup on it, and that was the only thing in the house. But little Haley, really excited that she finally had a house and finally had a room. She
Yeah.
she grabbed my hand and she says, let me show. I said, where's your room? She said, let me show you my room. So she took me back in her room, and you can imagine, I mean, there's holes in the carpet, and the closet didn't have a door on it, and there was used Barbie dolls and stuff like that. But really, Ron, the most shocking thing was in the corner, and it was a pile of clothes, a little nest, and that's where Haley slept. She'd come home from school, she'd take her school clothes off, put her PJs on, sleep on her school clothes, and the next day just put them back on and go to school. I mean, it was something I'd never seen before, and I've seen poverty before, but I never really looked at it
Yeah.
through the eyes of a 6-year-old. And if that wasn't enough to just melt your heart, you look up at her mom. I mean, single mom, and I was raised by a single mom, so this really was a knife right to my heart. 6 years of tears pouring down this lady's face, and and I knew what every single one of those tears meant, and
Yeah.
right then, Ron, I knew this is more than just a bed. This is more than just a good night's sleep.
Yeah. Uh, Heartbreaking,
Yeah.
but the the reward that you get from doing this and
Oh,
seeing these things, you can't buy that.
no, no.
And it's great because I mean I do volunteer work for the male breast cancer uh, happens.org. I've had it twice. People don't know about it. A lot of men,
Mm,
they
right.
think I'm wearing a shirt, that says it, and they go, "Is that a joke?" And that kind of thing. And then we start talking to them, and we've helped men out there who thought, hey, yeah, I've got something wrong. I never thought about checking it out. So,
Mm,
it's the same as what you're doing, in this in the
mhm.
same regard. You're helping people, and you can't put a price on it.
No.
Much better
Well,
to much better to give than to receive.
and here's one thing I found out too. I actually call this my Hank story. If you don't mind me sharing another story
Now
with
go
you,
ahead.
providing beds for kids is obviously the where the rubber meets the road. I mean, when I saw Haley, her reaction to when she finally figured out that we were bringing pieces of bed in and putting it together for her, she erupted and she hugged complete strangers. She went and hugged the bed. She kissed the bed. I mean, I'd
Wow.
never seen that before. So, that's one feeling. But what I also didn't realize is the joy that we provide, that Sleep Another Piece and other organizations, that volunteering provides a volunteer. I met this guy named Hank. He was an 80s 180-year-old man. I mean, he's just an old guy, and he was there to volunteer. It was my very first public build. And a build day is when someone sponsors a build. We require $300 or so for every bed that you want to build, and an organization wants to do like a team building exercise, or just donate money so their church group can be involved or whatever. But we take the raw lumber we get from our national sponsor Lowe's, and we 2x4s, 2x6s, and then we bring all the equipment needed to build these beds, and we build them kind of in a train style, right? So every volunteer has a job, and it's not an easy job. I mean, this is 4 hours. You take raw lumber, and in 4 hours you have 50 beds. But
So this
in
is kind
that,
of like an assembly process.
so Henry Ford would be proud of us.
Okay.
So here comes Hank, and I'm literally worried, like, hey, is this guy going to be able to last the build? I mean, he's an old guy, but you could see it on his face. This is a guy that knew how to work, and in fact, he had these little cards he was handing out to the other volunteers before we got started, and it said "Thank you for volunteering" on it, which I thought was really cool. So clearly, this guy has been part of
Yeah, don't
volunteering.
don't
He's
underestimate these old guys.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, trust me. When I saw him and he looked at me and he came up to me, handshake, firm handshake, and says, "Where do you need me?" Oh, yeah, there was just something in his voice. I'm like, this guy's here to work, and
Yeah,
we do all sorts of things. I mean, we sand and we drill and we cut wood and do all these things. Some roles are a little bit more important than others. Well, when he says, "Oh, I was a carpenter for 40 years," I'm like, "Oh, okay, I know exactly where to put you, brother. I'm gonna put you on cutting wood because
yeah,
you can screw up everything, but you can't screw up cutting that wood. You can't stretch that wood longer." So,
right.
um, so I put him on the wood station or the soft station, and then in a build process, you understand there's 60 volunteers or more out there. They're all new. Some of them may have never touched a drill before, and so you're running around as a chapter president, teaching and training, and people want to
Yeah.
talk to you. Well, 4 hours go by, Ron, and I completely forgot about Hank. I was like, "Oh my gosh, is he still?" I mean, it was just. I felt really bad actually. Well, so I turned around and went back to the head of the train, and there was old Hank, and his clothes were as white as his hair, just covered in sawdust. And I mean, I just felt bad, and I said, "Hank, I am sorry. I got busy. I forgot. Are you okay?" And he looked up to me and he says, I want to tell you, I've volunteered a lot of my time. I have never shown up to an event, and in 5 minutes, I was put on an assignment, and I could not leave that assignment for hours because people relied on me, right? And I was like,
Yeah.
sorry, And he's like,
Right.
no, no, thank you. And I learned right then, Ron, and we have a saying in SHP, the happiest volunteer is the sweatiest and the dustiest. And I learned it's because when you take time out of your day to volunteer, like Hank, here's a guy that should be just enjoying retirement, but no, he wants to give back. This guy's not here to push a broom around or punch a button. This guy is here to work. And when you work, when you put the time in and the sweat and the energy in something like building a bed for a child, you're going to feel it the next day, but you're also going to feel like you actually made a difference because you did, right? That hard work is the fulfillment that we provide for our volunteers, and it's something that I underestimated at the beginning, but we completely value now.
Yeah, and you probably he probably was very happy that you gave him an assignment right away and
Oh,
you treated him respectfully,
yeah,
because a lot of times you can volunteer at different places and they just kind of slough you off, that kind of thing. Uh,
yeah.
well, I guess that was kind of my next question. How do you keep the volunteers motivated and connected to the mission? But besides Hank, what about the other people, the younger people? How do you keep them motivated and connected?
It's a great question. There's a good saying that actually came from our church is, every volunteer needs a job, needs an assignment or an understanding of that job, and needs to be nourished by the mission, right? The We have two different kind of feels in SHP. There's the build day. It's the feel and the excitement and the energy that comes from working with other people that you would otherwise pass in the grocery store, but no, you're waiting on them to give you a piece of wood so you can do it and then pass it to the next guy, right? And you actually get your fingerprints on every single piece of wood that comes through there that's going to be a bed for a child in a couple of hours, right? So you get some sense of community and camaraderie, collecting together, working together on a
Yeah,
common goal. You get that feel in a build day. And then there's the delivery, which is really a lot of times where the rubber meets the road for most people. When you go to deliver a bed and you see the conditions that these kids are sleeping in. When I did the show with Mike Rowe, he'd never seen anything like that. I remember we were walking down the stairs in the basement where these two kids were sleeping, literally on cement floors in the middle of November in Idaho. I mean, there was no sheetrock. It was just studs and cement floors. And I could see it on
unbelievable.
Mike's face. He'd never seen that before. And then you see the excitement of these kids. Sometimes they're like a little nervous, right? They're 6, 7 years old. There's strangers in their house, in their bedroom. They're hiding behind mom. But almost every time, Ron, when they start recognizing as we bring in these pieces and put these beds together, certainly when the mattress comes in, these kids come out from behind mom and dad and they want to help. They want to grab the drill and put stuff together and they want to help put their bed. Most of the time, it'll be 3 o'clock in the afternoon and this kid is in bed asleep because they've never slept in one.
Wow. Wow. With so much growth, what have been some of the toughest leadership lessons you have learned?
That's a great question. The hardest thing about when you go big national like this is just trying to keep the ship in the right direction, especially like I mentioned in a franchise chapter model. You get all sorts of new ideas and people coming into your organization that really want to help. Mission creep is a real problem for most nonprofits, and you understand like people become or get involved with nonprofits because they have big hearts, right? They really want to give back. And so it's
Yeah.
hard for anybody to go into these environments like we go into. And yeah, the kid doesn't have a bed. I guarantee you there's other things in that house that they don't have as well that each one of those volunteers could provide or want to provide. And it's difficult to not. We have a very simple, clear mission that we keep very tight. We build and deliver beds. That's it. We don't even provide, books or or paint the beds differently or anything like that. No, we wanted to provide a simple, straightforward, transparent bed that's sturdy and will last a long time. Otherwise, we end up like a lot of nonprofits who end up just giving that, trying to provide everything to everyone. And
Yeah.
that's probably one of the biggest challenges, that and trying to train the people coming in how to run a nonprofit, how to run a chapter, and how to keep things in line with with the IRS and ethical and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now, how does SHP fund its operations, and how
You bet.
can individuals or organizations support the mission?
You bet. So, like I said, one thing I found out that was really interesting was how many people really wanted to be a part of a build day. In fact, I had friends, when I used to only build one time a year. And when friends found out that I had my build day happened and they didn't get a go or didn't hear about it, they almost got mad at me. I was like, man, I'm sorry about that, But it was really shocking to me. I'm like, you wanted to spend your Saturday morning in a cold warehouse getting sweaty and I mean, and what I learned again was no, these people really wanted to give back. They enjoyed it. And I found that there are companies, every company has a CSR, right? A corporate social responsibility. And they always lay some poor, usually a gal in HR, to try to find some event that the company can, give back, or maybe a team building exercise. If it's a nonprofit, great. But it's got to be something that 10 or 200 people can do because we don't know who's going to show up. I mean, all of these boxes that this poor HR gal has to check off to try to
Right.
find is a difficult thing. Well, we check them all off, right? In fact, it's so easy. Just all we tell organizations and companies that want to build with us, look, I just need to know your dollar budget, and I need to know how many volunteers. And if you want to build at your location, great. Those are the only thing. After that, we take care of everything. And it's such a great team building exercise that
Yeah.
most of our donations, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I know it's around 65% of the donations that we receive as SHP come from corporate sponsored builds. About 10 to 12% come from grants, rather. And then the others come from usually individuals. We have what's called the Bunkhead Club, which is a monthly donation subscription club where you can donate $20 or more a month. And by the end of the year,
Have you ever looked around your life and thought, is this all there is? Have you ever dreamed of starting fresh, exploring the world, or reinventing yourself, but then stopped because you thought you were too old to begin again? If so, this message is for you. Barbara Grassey's inspiring book, American Expat Moving Abroad After 60, is a powerful guide for anyone who believes adventure, growth, and purpose don't end at retirement, they begin there. In this honest and encouraging book, Barbara shares real life experiences, practical guidance, and hard earned wisdom for Americans who are considering a bold move overseas later in life. This isn't a fantasy filled travel memoir, it's a realistic, hopeful roadmap for turning someday into now. Barbara understands the fears that come with such a big decision. Questions like, where should I live? Can I afford it? What about health care? What if I feel lonely or overwhelmed? And what will my family think? American Expat, moving abroad after 60, doesn't shy away from these concerns. Instead, it tackles them head on with clarity, compassion, and encouragement. Barbara explains the emotional side of leaving behind familiarity while also offering practical insights on finances, housing, healthcare, and adapting to a new culture. This book is for retirees, near retirees, and anyone in their 60s and beyond who feels called to something more. It's for people who know they still have stories to write, places to see, and purpose to pursue. What makes this book especially powerful is its message of empowerment. Barbara reminds readers that age is not a limitation, it's an asset. Life experience, resilience, and wisdom make it possible to navigate change with confidence and grace. You'll discover how moving abroad can bring a renewed sense of freedom, lower living costs in many countries, new friendships and community, cultural enrichment and adventure, and a deeper connection to yourself. Most importantly, this book gives you permission to dream again and the tools to act on those dreams. So if you've ever imagined sipping coffee in a foreign cafe, walking historic streets, or waking up each day knowing you chose courage over comfort, American Expat Moving Abroad After 60 is your invitation to begin. It's never too late to start a new chapter. It's never too late to follow a calling, and it's never too late to choose a life that excites you. Your next adventure may be waiting just beyond your comfort zone. Discover American Expat Moving Abroad After 60 by Barbara Grassey, available now in paper book and Kindle format from Amazon and major book retailers.
You provided a bed for a kid, but most of our donations come from those that want to be a part of a build. They donate the $300 per bed, and we build beds with them.
Now, the build day, what is that like? You said that was like 4 hours. Uh,
Yeah, typically they're 4 hours. So our chapter president and their core team, usually made up of 10 or 20 people or so, they'll set up the build day with the sponsoring agent. Let's say, I don't know, the local bank wants to do a build day.
yeah,
So we organize with the bank. Look, we're going to do it on February 2nd, Saturday, usually from 9 to noon or 9 to 1. Their budget might be $6,000. So we're going to build 20 beds. And we're going to handle, either 25 or 75 volunteers, however many show up. And so we assemble, we order the wood shows up in the morning. We set up all our equipment in this stages, right? These stations.
right.
And then when the volunteers show up, we have a brief announcement, and then we assign them to certain stations. And then we have a core team member at that station teaching them the safety parts of the tools that they're using, as well as the process. And then they go to town. And I mean, it's actually really fun to watch, because as a chapter president and a core team member, we don't really build anything. We just provide training so the volunteers have the experience of building the beds. And it
Right.
takes about 30 minutes or so for everybody to kind of get a groove. But what's really fun to watch, Ron, is there'll be people that have never been to a build before, and they're on the headboard assembly station, and they're once they learn how to do it, these two or three people are working together and learning how to do it. All of a sudden, they find their fast way and the way that they want to do it. Then they get in competitions with other parts. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just super fun to watch how, something as simple as drilling, this hole, is it marked right here, drill this and put a screw in it, can be super fun for the whole group, because they
Yeah.
know what it's going to.
And for a lot of people, it's probably, so rewarding. Like, I've never done this before. Look at what I
Right.
did.
Oh
You know.
yeah, I,
Yeah.
I remember I had a team from a bank, actually, and they were all women. I don't know if it was like a women's group or whatnot. I kid you not, some of them showed up in stilettos. It was lunchtime. They showed up in stilettos, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be crazy. Oh man, they built more headboards so fast. It was
Oh
unbelievable.
yeah,
And they
yeah,
they had a great time, and that's really what it's about. In fact, we tell people, look, we don't make this process streamlined. It's not supposed to be efficient. I mean, we make it as efficient as we'd like to, because
yeah,
what there is a point where efficiency, what does it do? It robs a volunteer of an opportunity to serve. So if it takes away a volunteer, we don't follow that process, because we want people to be involved. And this is, again, nonprofits need to remember, don't eliminate an opportunity for someone to volunteer, even if it's a hard job. It's even more important that if it's a hard job, get someone on it, because that's where they really feel fulfilled.
yeah. What message do you want listeners to take away about the importance of ensuring every child has a safe place to sleep?
The first thing is I'd ask every single one of your audience members to help us raise awareness. It is such an unknown problem right now. I tell people what I do, and I usually get two questions. And the first question is, well, is it really that big of a deal? And it really is. It is that big of a problem. And the second one is, well, it's probably not in my hometown. I live in a pretty rich part of the town. Hey, we have a chapter in Pinehurst, South Carolina, if that tells you anything, which is one of the wealthiest counties in the country.
Yeah,
So it's everywhere. So you can help us raise awareness. The second thing is help us. We're a charity. You can donate, and I think this is important, Ron. I think you'd appreciate this. I'm a farm kid from Idaho. When I didn't want this to be a nonprofit. I didn't really care for nonprofits simply because I didn't know where my dollars went, especially when it came to finances, right? And I
Right.
know a lot of people worry about that. So if I was going to start a nonprofit, I was going to do the financing the way I would want a nonprofit to be ran. And that's the way we still do it. So if you want to donate your money, and let's say you're donating it to your brother's community in Miami or Texas, right? You select a chapter that your donation goes to, and 90% of that dollar goes to that chapter, and the beds that are built stay in that chapter. So you know your dollar and that bed stays in the community that you donated it to. Now, granted, we have to take 10% because you got to turn on the lights and pay for insurances and all that kind of stuff. But 90%, and it's actually even a little greater than that because we pay for that 10% also pays for all the insurance, all the tax, all those dollars that are
Yeah.
needed, software programs that the chapters use. We pay for all that. So it actually comes out to about 96% of your dollar goes to programming. So donations, we take hold very sacred and value very much and make sure it goes in the right direction.
Yeah,
The third
because
thing is,
a lot of people think, well, is this money just going to some
yep,
CEO that's
yep.
making a, 600,000 a year or something?
Correct. And
Yeah.
they're out there, unfortunately,
Oh,
and
they
it
are.
just ruins the game for all of us. And so we are as transparent as we possibly can. We actually have the highest level of transparency on Candid, GuideStar, and Charity Navigator because we want to make sure, and it's very important that when you donate, you know where that dollar's going.
Absolutely.
Um, and the
Absolutely.
third thing is they can volunteer at their local chapter. When you go to shpbeds.org, our chapter, or excuse me, our website, it's not going to bring up some national main page. It's going to bring up the chapter that's closest to you. So
Oh,
you're going to
okay.
see like, this chapter has 180 kids on their waiting list. They've delivered this much. There'll be some national numbers that you can look at. But again, we want to keep this a community driven, a community fired up type event, and so you'll learn how you can donate your time and efforts to the chapter locally. Now, the last thing, which I think is very critical too, is if you don't have a chapter in your area, if this is something that you really want to be a part of, if this really strikes a chord at your heart, then you can start a chapter. We have on the website a link that says start a chapter, and how that works is you click on that, you're going to watch a couple of minute webinar of me talking and others just sharing their experience about being a chapter president, and then you fill out this, it's about a 6-page application, and it's really more of us trying to let that person know what a chapter president does. We want them to make sure that they know what they're getting into, right? That
Right.
if they submit that, then they're invited to a monthly actual live webinar where they can ask questions to people that are also chapter presidents. We have the country split up and have what we call chapter support leads, basically regional directors, and they get to ask their questions. And if they still want to be a chapter after that, then we schedule for them to fly to Utah, and we do a weekend training with them on how to build the beds, how to run the chapter, and what I wanted to do, Ron, is make becoming a chapter as simple as possible. I mean, it's still work, don't get me wrong, but I wanted to make it as simple as possible because it can be simple, especially if this is a passion of yours. So when we bring them to training, we train them basically on the 3 things they need to focus on: raising money, which is going to be the easiest thing that they do, building beds, and then delivering beds. Those are the 3 things that the chapter president really wants to focus on. All the other minutia that goes into business and keeping the lights on, the CSC, what we call Chapter Support Center, we handle that all for them. We just want them to
Okay.
focus on what's important, which is getting
That's
beds for
good. That's
kids. Yeah.
good. Now, for those out there listening or viewing, because we're on YouTube, and come upon a situation that they observe and would like to correct, not necessarily the bad issue, but other things like happened to you, what advice can you give them? Just general advice.
Like if they
Because
came across,
there's a lot of need out there for,
yeah.
other things too, of
Yeah.
course.
Well, I think if you come across something that you see a need for, right? Especially if it's something that isn't being solved. And this really strikes a chord with you. You know, I do a lot of keynote speaking on tiny moments, and how we all have these tiny moments that pop into our head, and we think about, and too often, Ron, we just dismiss them, right? It's, you know, we don't have enough time, or I don't know how to do that, or that's too hard, or someone else is taking care of that. You know, let them do it. You know, it's a shame, and I'm guilty of it too. We dismiss these tiny moments, and all I can say in my experience is I'm sure glad when my one tiny moment rang, sitting on that couch. It whether the stars were aligned or whatnot, I still had to decide to put my feet on the ground and get into the garage. And had I not done that, you know, I hate to think that the 350,000 kids plus that we've delivered beds to wouldn't have beds. That's I just can't think about that. And there are people out there. I tell people, look, I started your program saying, hey, I'm just a farm kid from Idaho. I do that for a reason, Ron, because I want people to understand you don't have to be anybody. Anybody can make a difference. It just takes a little action, a little grit, you know, and a little
Yeah.
passion to follow it. And so when you come across something that you think you can be a part of, do it. You might not change the world, but you're going to change the world for that one person.
Well, that's what we say here on the podcast. I mean, that's how I started out. Now, if you asked me 6 years ago, I'd be talking to you on a podcast. I'd say, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't know what you're talking about. But I had
Yeah.
a one of those light bulb moments that happened to me. And then I got involved with male breast cancer happens.org, and we do a lot of good work and advocacy work out there. And so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Those are epiphanies or light bulb moments, as I call them.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yep. And act and just act on them. You know, you never know what can
yeah,
come from them. And maybe nothing, at least nothing that you might find out about, but something's going to happen if you don't, and that is nothing. And so you know, it's an opportunity
exactly.
for us to give back. And I
Yeah,
like I said earlier, if you want true joy, in my opinion and my experience, you got to stop looking at yourself and find ways to serve others. And your problems, they don't go away. They just aren't going to be near as heavy, you get a better
exactly.
perspective on life. So
Exactly. Like I say, maybe this broadcast might only affect one or two people, but that's fine. If we weren't
absolutely.
talking, that wouldn't happen at all. So,
You know, Ron, all it takes is one person listening today to start a chapter. And that one person and that one chapter that gets started could literally help thousands and thousands of kids
right.
down the road. And how beautiful is that?
So this podcast is going to go out on all kinds of social media, and
Awesome.
let's hope we find several people out there.
Hope so.
So, once again, how can people contact you? And I will have that in the podcast notes. But what's the
You bet.
best way to contact you?
So the first thing is go to our website, shpbeds.org, right?
Okay.
You'll learn how to donate, how to find your chapter, volunteer, do all that. If you want to look for me specifically, I'm on Facebook. I'm on all the shows. It's Luke Mickelson or SHP Luke. You'll find me. I'd love to have you follow me. I post content about things that the chapters and what SHP have done. I share stories of, you know, what we do, and the impact that we create for these kids to help motivate others. Yeah, we would love to. I'd love to connect with everybody.
Okay. So that's shpbeds.org or Luke Mickelson at shpbeds.org, right?
Luke.Mickelson. Yeah,
Yes.
that's my email address. So
Luke dot Mickelson.
yep,
Okay,
yep.
got it. Got it. Luke, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey behind Sleep in Heavenly Peace. Your passion, your leadership have helped thousands of children sleep in comfort and safety. And your mission continues to remind us how powerful it is when one person decides to take action. It's been an honor having you here. I want to thank you for the work you've done, and thanks again for being on the podcast. I know you have a book coming out in the future, and I hope to have you back. And I hope to do, and we'll do something with the book.
That'd
So,
be great. Thank you,
okay,
Ron.
great. Comments and suggestions for the podcast can email me at it's a wrap with rap at gmail.com. Our Facebook group is It's a Wrap with Rap. We have about 2,000 members. It's a private group. So if you want to join, just email me. The website is it's a wrap with rap.com, and we're on X at Rapper, WRAPPER 130. We're on all the social media platforms. We're on YouTube, all the episodes on YouTube at It's a Wrap with Rap, the podcast uncut. I want to thank everyone for listening or viewing, and I want everybody to please stay safe. And for now, it's a wrap. The podcast is so happy and proud to have Blue Sky CBD as one of our sponsors and supporters. At Blue Sky CBD, they know that the highest quality CBD starts from the seed. Blue Sky partners with sustainable, responsible farms for superior hemp plants to extract their CBD and other healthful phytonutrients. Each of Blue Sky's products contain high concentrations of CBD for maximum impact, and Blue Sky offers some of the lowest cost per milligram CBD on the market. All Blue Sky's products are THC free and are tested by a third party laboratory for potency and purity. All this has made Blue Sky one of the only CBD brands trusted by healthcare professionals across the United States. As the demand for CBD and its therapeutic potential have grown rapidly worldwide, it is difficult to know which products you can trust. At Blue Sky CBD, they just don't sell their products, they use their products. Blue Sky CBD proudly shares testimonials of their loved ones who use these products. Blue Sky CBD guarantees the potency and purity of each and every product they sell. Blue Sky tests their products 3 times. First, the plant is tested, next, the isolate, and last, the final product to ensure each product batch meets Blue Sky's high standards. A copy of the certificate of analysis is linked below each product description online. The Blue Sky CBD website contains client testimonials, including a case study for each testimonial from the people just like you, regarding people dealing with severe anxiety and insomnia, high blood pressure, pain management, headache, rheumatoid arthritis and spondylitis, and endocrine balance. Blue Sky even makes the product Pet Love for our canine and feline family members. Blue Sky CBD uses CBD derived from hemp that is THC free, which is drug free and can be sold everywhere legally in the United States. Blue Sky CBD wants you to feel confident with your purchase and offers you excellent customer service. If you are not satisfied with their products, you may request a refund of the full purchase price within 30 days of the product received date. When ordering, please use the podcast link to receive 20% off your initial purchase. The link and website information will be listed in the podcast notes.